On the day Aunt Eleanor died, I was elbow-deep in garden soil, planting the heirloom roses she had given me for my birthday. The sun was warm on my back, and I lost myself in the task until my phone buzzed 3 times, pulling me out of my concentration. Reluctantly, I peeled off my gloves and answered. A formal voice I didn't recognize greeted me. "Miss Blackwood, this is James Morton, your Aunt Eleanor's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news." My heart froze. The roses suddenly felt heavy in my hands, her last gift to me. "What happened?" I managed, voice trembling. "Your aunt passed away peacefully in her sleep last night." There was a pause. "She left explicit instructions for me to contact you first before anyone else in the family." I sank to my knees, the dirt pressing into my skin, scarcely registering his words. Aunt Eleanor, the woman who taught me to read, who snuck me chocolate chip cookies during dreary family gatherings, who supported every dream I ever had, was gone. "Miss Blackwood, are you there?" "Yes," I whispered. "I'm here. What do you need me to do?" She left specific instructions about her funeral arrangements, and, more importantly, she left you a letter that must be opened before the service. Would you be able to come to my office today? I looked down at the roses, Queen Elizabeth variety, her favorite. She'd handed them to me just 2 weeks ago, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "These have been in my family for generations," she'd said. Just like secrets. At the time, I thought it was just another of her cryptic remarks. Now I wasn't so sure. "I'll be there in an hour," I replied. James Morton's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone who managed old money, dark wood, leather-bound books, and a view of the city skyline that probably cost more than my annual salary. He stood as I entered, offering a sympathetic smile. "Miss Blackwood, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, have a seat." I sank into one of the plush leather chairs, trying to steady my trembling hands. "Mr. Morton, what's this about? Why did Aunt Eleanor want you to contact me first?" He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out 2 envelopes, a thick, official-looking one with the law firm's letterhead, and a smaller, cream-colored one with my name written in Aunt Eleanor's elegant handwriting. "Your aunt was an unusual woman," Morton said carefully. "Brilliant in business, but quite particular about how things should be done. She left very specific instructions about her will and her funeral arrangements." "That sounds like her," I said softly. He slid the cream envelope across the desk. "She wanted you to read this privately, then we can discuss the rest." My hands trembled as I took the envelope, the scent of roses and vanilla lingering on the paper, her signature perfume. Carefully, I opened it, revealing a single sheet of her stationery. "My dearest Olivia," it read, "if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Don't be sad. I've lived exactly the life I wanted, which is more than many can say. But I need one last favor from you, my darling niece. At my funeral, you'll need to read a letter, one that will change our family forever. You'll find it in the hidden compartment of my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were 12. Remember the trick with the rose carving? Some might call this revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. Long delayed, perhaps, but justice all the same. I've left everything to you, Montgomery Industries, my personal assets, all of it. But there's a condition. You must read that letter at my funeral, with the entire family present. No exceptions. I know this is a lot to ask, especially now, but you've always been the strong one, Olivia, the honest one. That's why it has to be you. All my love, Aunt Eleanor. P.S. Don't let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige." I read the letter twice, then looked up at Morton. "She left everything to me." He nodded, opening the official envelope. "Montgomery Industries, her personal estate, investment portfolios, total assets approximately $89 million. But as she mentioned, it's conditional on you fulfilling her final request." My mind spun. Eleanor had always been generous, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. "What about the rest of the family? My father, my cousins? There are some small bequests, but the bulk of the estate is yours, assuming, of course, you agree to her terms." I thought of my father, who had always resented Eleanor's success, and my cousins, who had spent years sucking up to her, hoping to inherit her fortune. I remember the family gatherings, her quiet watching eyes, as if she was waiting for something to unfold. When is the funeral? I asked. 3 days from now. The service will be at St. Michael's Cathedral, followed by a reception at her estate. The entire family is expected to attend. I stood, clutching Eleanor's letter. Then I should go. I have to find that jewelry box. Morgan called after me as I reached the door. One more thing. Your aunt asked me to tell you. You'll know what to do with the truth. The drive to Eleanor's estate took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced. What secrets did that second letter hold? What was so important that she made it a condition of her will? As I approached, the gates opened automatically. Eleanor had given me the access code years ago, trusting me more than her security system. The house was exactly as I remembered. A sprawling Victorian mansion surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens, roses climbing every wall. Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, greeted me at the door, her eyes red from crying. "Oh, Miss Olivia, I'm so glad you're here." She left instructions that I should have full access to her rooms. I said gently. "Of course, dear." "She wanted you to have everything," Mrs. Peters whispered. Eleanor's bedroom was on the second floor, overlooking her beloved rose garden. Everything was elegant, yet touched with her whimsical touch. Bright silk curtains, modern art next to family portraits, all infused with her favorite roses. On her dresser sat the jewelry box, carved from beautiful Brazilian rosewood with intricate floral patterns. I ran my fingers along the edge until I found the small rose carving that concealed the release, just like she had instructed. "Third petal from the left," I whispered, recalling her instructions from years ago. A soft click sounded, and a hidden panel slid open. Inside was another envelope, sealed with wax and marked for reading at my funeral. My hand trembled as I lifted it, heavier than I expected, feeling like there were photographs or secrets inside. For a moment, I hesitated, wondering what truths lay within. I hesitated before opening the sealed envelope, and Eleanor's final message was clearly meant to be revealed in front of everyone at her funeral. Everything she did had a purpose, and I trusted that she knew what she was doing. Still, the urge to see what secrets lay inside was strong. I carefully slipped the envelope into my bag, taking a moment to glance around her room one last time. On the bedside table, I saw a framed photograph I'd never noticed before. It showed Aunt Eleanor as a young woman, standing confidently in front of Montgomery Industries' first office. She wore that knowing smile of hers, the one that always made me feel like she could see right through people's pretenses. "What did you know, Aunt?" I whispered softly to the photograph. What secret was worth waiting a lifetime to reveal? The next 3 days blurred past in a whirlwind of funeral preparations and family drama. My father called 6 times, his voice tinged with concern about the arrangements and a barely concealed anxiety about the will. My cousins flooded my phone with messages, each more self-interested than the last. Through it all, I kept Eleanor's sealed envelope close, sneaking away at night to look at it and wonder what truths it contained, what secret was so vital that she would risk her entire legacy on its disclosure. The morning of the funeral broke bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a deep blue suit, the color Aunt Eleanor loved, and pinned one of her prized roses to my lapel. The envelope felt unusually heavy in my bag, as if it carried more than just paper and photographs. When I arrived at St. Michael's Cathedral, it was already packed. Eleanor's family belonged to old money, and she had been a prominent figure in both business and philanthropy. The pews were filled with family, friends, city officials, and colleagues. My father was waiting for me as soon as I stepped inside, his face tense with anxiety. "Olivia, we need to talk about the will," he said in a low voice. "Morton won't tell us anything. Says we have to wait until after the service." "What's going on?" I asked, meeting his gaze. "We'll find out soon enough," he replied, trying to sound confident. That's what Aunt Eleanor wanted. As I tried to pass him, he grabbed my arm. "Olivia, if you know something—" "Let go," I said quietly but firmly. "This is Eleanor's funeral. Show some respect." The service was beautifully done, exactly as Eleanor would have wanted. No beige in sight, only roses in deep reds and vibrant pinks, her favorite colors. The minister spoke of her generosity, her intelligence, and her unwavering dedication to making the world better. When it was over, Morton caught my eye from the front pew and nodded subtly. With trembling hands, I approached the podium clutching Eleanor's envelope. The cathedral fell silent, every eye on me. My father sat stiffly in the front row, his face a mask of barely concealed anxiety. My cousins, John and Rebecca, leaned forward eagerly, like vultures waiting for their meal. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of roses that drifted through the air. In that moment, I felt Eleanor standing beside me, giving me strength. My Aunt Eleanor left me a letter. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. She wanted it read here today, in front of everyone who knew her. Carefully, I broke the wax seal, aware of the weight of hundreds of eyes upon me. Inside, I found several sheets of paper and, as I suspected, photographs. As I pulled them out, I heard my father emit a strangled sound from the front pew. The first photograph showed a young Eleanor standing beside a man I didn't recognize, both smiling and holding up what looked like blueprints. The second showed the same man at a construction site, with the early foundations of what I now recognized as Montgomery Industries' first building. I began to read aloud from Eleanor's letter. My name was Eleanor Montgomery, and this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began, I announced. The congregation murmured. In the front row, my father's face had gone pale. The man in these photos is Harold Bennett, I continued, a brilliant engineer and my business partner in 1975. He was also the true founder of Montgomery Industries. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Harold and I met at university. We shared a vision for creating sustainable building materials that would revolutionize construction. Harold's technical genius combined with my business sense, and together we laid the foundation of what would become Montgomery Industries. I pulled out another photograph, Eleanor and Harold shaking hands over what appeared to be a contract. We were equal partners, sharing everything, patents, profits, the entire enterprise, until October 15, 1976, when Harold died in what was officially reported as a car accident. My father started to stand, but Uncle James quickly pulled him back down. I pressed on, my voice unwavering. But it wasn't an accident. The brake lines in Harold's car had been cut. I discovered this too late, after the police had closed the case. I also found documents filed just hours before Harold's death, transferring his share of the company to the Montgomery Family Trust, signed, or so it seemed, by Harold himself. But I now realized the signature was forged by my own brother, Richard Montgomery. The cathedral erupted with whispers and gasps. My father leapt to his feet, rage contorting his face. "Stop this immediately!" he shouted. "No, Dad," I said calmly. "This is the truth. Aunt Eleanor left proof." I raised a stack of documents from the envelope, original contracts, forensic reports, police records, bank transfers. She kept everything. Why? A stunned silence fell. My cousin John looked from me to my father, horror dawning on his face. "Why reveal this now?" he asked. "Because," I answered, "after 45 years, I've built Montgomery Industries into something Harold Bennett would be proud of, funding research, supporting sustainable innovation, creating opportunities. But I've also watched my brother profit from his crime, raising his children to believe privilege makes them untouchable. Eleanor spent decades gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to expose the truth, so that her legacy wouldn't be tainted forever." I reached into the envelope once more and pulled out a yellowed letter addressed to Harold Bennett's only surviving relative, his daughter Sarah. "This is her," I said softly. "Harold's daughter. She's now a leader in green technology, unaware of who's been secretly supporting her." Eleanor's final act was to leave 30% of Montgomery Industries to Sarah as partial restitution, and the remaining controlling interest to me, Olivia Montgomery, because I've upheld her values of integrity and innovation. The stunned crowd watched as a woman from the middle pew, about my age, rose. She had Harold's dark eyes and a look of quiet determination. Eleanor had arranged everything. She even ensured Sarah would be present for this revelation. Sarah stepped forward, stopping before my father, her expression pained. "Years," she said softly. "I thought my father abandoned his work. I never knew what truly happened. Thank you for telling me." I approached her gently. "I'm sorry for what was taken from you." Eleanor was trying to make things right, her own way. For a moment, the cathedral was silent. Then Sarah nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. The hours that followed were tense and chaotic. Disagreements erupted among family members. some demanding the letter be suppressed, others insisting it be turned over to authorities, and many simply stunned into silence. My father disappeared immediately after the service, leaving us with more questions than answers. As I stepped outside into the sunlight, I knew this was only the beginning of a long journey, one that would forever change our family's legacy. As the months passed after the funeral, I rarely heard from my father. It wasn't until he checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, finally facing the guilt he'd carried for 45 years, that I understood the weight of the secrets he'd kept hidden. The truth about Montgomery Industries' founding became public knowledge, but Aunt Eleanor had been right. The company was strong enough to survive it. With Sarah Bennett's technical expertise and my commitment to Aunt Eleanor's vision, we began a new chapter in the company's history. A year after the funeral, I stood in Aunt Eleanor's rose garden, which was blooming more vibrantly than ever. Sarah joined me for our weekly meeting, where we discussed everything from company strategy to our shared passion for sustainable innovation. I always felt like someone was looking out for me, guiding my career from afar, Sarah said, gently touching one of Aunt Eleanor's prized Queen Elizabeth roses. I used to think it was my father's spirit. Now I know it was Elena's. I think she tried to protect everyone, I said, smiling. The company, its employees, even my father in her own way. She just couldn't let the truth die with her. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Do you think she made the right choice waiting all those years? I considered the question carefully. I think she did the best she could with an impossible situation. She turned a company built on fraud into a force for good. She made sure you were taken care of, and in the end, she made sure the truth came out on her terms. Sarah asked me another question, one that had been weighing on my mind for months. Do you ever regret being the one who had to reveal it all? I looked out over the rose garden, remembering Aunt Eleanor's knowing smile, her cryptic comments, and her quiet strength. No, I said finally. Aunt Eleanor chose me because she knew I could handle it. She knew I'd understand that sometimes doing the right thing means facing uncomfortable truths. Sarah nodded in agreement. I think Aunt Eleanor would be proud of what we've built, a real partnership like she and your father intended. I smiled, touching one of the roses that Aunt Eleanor had given me, now blooming in her garden. She once told me these roses had been in her family for generations, just like secrets. But maybe it's time for new traditions, truth instead of secrets, partnership instead of power, and building something together instead of taking from each other. Sarah squeezed my hand. I think both our fathers would like that. That evening, as I sat in Aunt Eleanor's study, now my study, going over company reports, I found a small note tucked into her old desk calendar. It was dated the day she died, written in her elegant hand. Dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you've done what I asked. You faced the truth and handled it with grace. That's why I chose you, not just to inherit the company, but to make it better than it was, to make it what Harold and I dreamed it could be. The roses in the garden will bloom again next spring, Aunt Eleanor wrote. When they do, remember that beauty can grow from even the darkest soil if we have the courage to plant it. As I placed the note carefully in my drawer and looked out at the garden where the setting sun painted the roses in shades of gold, I knew that Aunt Eleanor had left me more than just a company. She'd left me a chance to right an old wrong, to build something meaningful, and to prove that it's never too late for truth to bloom. Tomorrow would bring meetings and decisions and all the responsibilities that came with running a multi-million-dollar company. But for now, I sat in the quiet of Aunt Eleanor's study, surrounded by the scent of roses, knowing that sometimes the heaviest inheritances aren't measured in money but in the weight of the truths we choose to carry. And like Aunt Eleanor, I would carry this truth with grace, using it not to destroy but to build, not to punish but to heal, creating something beautiful from the soil of the past. After all, that's what Aunt Eleanor had done, and that's what she had trained me to do. As I smiled to myself, I knew she was watching with that knowing smile of hers, proud that her final secret had finally found its way into the light.